Throughout history, we have seen the majority and masses continue on with what is happening, never challenging the status quo just because it is there. But in every society and community, there is a select few that challenge normal practices, fighting for justice and equality. It is these men and women who make it into the history books. Men and women like this fundamentally reform the fabric of a nation and the actions of a world. India has Mahatma Gandhi, South Africa has Nelson Mandela, and we have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I would like to welcome you all to the 25th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration on behalf of the College and the Student Government Association. We all know Dr. King and the dream that he held for America, but as I look around this room right now, I realize that without his courageous actions, many of us wouldn't be in here together today. So today, you're going to learn more about this remarkable man, the changes he created for our country, and the path he laid for the world. I would like to introduce Greg Chase, who will be giving the official welcome. He will be followed by Trevor Keat, who will be giving a special musical selection.
I hope the adults here, the staff and faculty, know these words. Diversity. We honor diversity in the college community, diversity of age, disability, ethnicity, gender, identity, race, religion, and sexual orientation, and recognized that diversity includes varied learning styles, cultural and economic differences. That is one of our core values here at Forsyth Technical Community College. And on behalf of Dr. Green and the college leadership, I welcome you to Forsyth Tech as we honor the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Are there any elected officials present? Okay. Are there any members of our Board of Trustees present? All right. Is Greg Young present? Well, Greg Young is our Director of Minority Male Mentoring Program. It was originally originated by Mr. James Rousseau when I first got to the college 12 years ago. It's a very important college program, and some of the students here today are part of that program. And thank you, Greg, for being here and doing what you do. My daily devotion today focused on Psalm 107, verse 2. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, those he redeemed from the hand of the foe. And I think anyone who has been in harm's way can relate to that. For God promises a safe landing, not a calm passage. One of my instructors told me, if God is your co-pilot, change seats. And another mentor told me, when you pray, don't give God instructions, just report for duty. So here I am. And I thank Beverly for inviting me to speak. We are gathered here to celebrate freedom and to remember Dr. King's sacrifice. In doing so, we are exercising several of our unalienable rights described in the Declaration of Independence as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These rights are further detailed in the U.S. Constitution, its Bill of Rights, and subsequent amendments, which modified the original document so that we do not discriminate against any citizen based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The First Amendment says about all, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people to assemble peacefully and to petition the government for redress of grievances. And we've been doing that ever since the Founding Fathers wrote the document, and we have amended it in order to prevent discrimination and recognize the rights of every human being. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause. We have seen in recent years that some of that has been eroded with the FISA courts as a result of 9/11, but nonetheless, we have a right to privacy in our personal being, every one of us. Now let's jump a few years to the Battle of the Civil War, which I think was pretty critical. It was the Battle of Fort Fisher right here in North Carolina, out on the coast. Fort Fisher had kept the port of Wilmington open to blockade runners supplying goods to the Confederate troops. The fort's fall on January 15th, 1865, helped seal the Confederacy's fate. Wilmington was the last remaining supply line for Robert E. Lee's Army of the Northern Virginia. And then came the 13th Amendment 15 days later, January 31st, 1865. It was passed but not ratified. And then President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on April 14th, 1865. And finally, the 13th Amendment was ratified December 6th, 1865. A portion of Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution was superseded by the 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And the most important clause that you'll find at the end of many of these amendments, Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. And what that was eventually interpreted to mean is we can send federal troops into places where people don't want to obey this. Remember, in the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 2 refers to 3/5 of all other persons, talking about slaves. And it was not amended until 1868 when the 14th Amendment was ratified. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privilege or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process. This was followed by the 15th Amendment in 1869, ratified 1870. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman wrote an executive order and integrated the U.S. Armed Forces. 1948, from 1865 to 1948. What was going on? Well, the armed forces were segregated, and very much so. Truman wasn't expected to win the election, but he did. He and Forrestal, the Secretary of Defense, were the only two people in the government that really wanted to integrate the armed forces. And the main reason they wanted to is because history had proven that integrated troops fight better. And they fight better because they depend on each other for every breath they take. The Navy and the Air Force already had plans to integrate, but the Army maintained a rigid policy of segregation. I'm sorry, General. The executive order didn't really change much at first. It took a war for integration to become a reality, and that war was the Korean War in the early 50s. That's because in combat they became desperate for troops, and they found that black soldiers fight better in integrated units. That's a quote from Mr. Crane, who is the historian for the federal government at the time. That's because in combat they become desperate for troops, and they found that black soldiers fight better in integrated units. The pressures of combat and the need to find people to fight is what really pushed the Army and Marine Corps into it. The Army integrated in Korea before it did in non-combat areas. Fort Benning, Georgia, and other posts in the United States still were segregated, as were units in Europe and areas of the Pacific. But the war changed that, and by 1953, 95% of African American service members were serving as members of integrated units. But while the posts were integrated, when these soldiers went off post, they were subject to the same Jim Crow laws and everything else that was still existing in our segregated society. I was 16, a junior in Silver Lake Regional High School in Kingston, Massachusetts, and on September 15, 1963, members of the KKK bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. To me, that was a world away, but a world in which Condoleezza Rice grew up. The racist terrorist bombing rocked the nation. But for Condi Rice, just 8 years old at the time, the tragedy meant the death of a little girl she played dolls with, and the loss of her own youthful sense of security. There's no greater loss to a child than a sense of security. Rice's hometown had become a place too dangerous for black children to leave their own neighborhoods or to go downtown and visit Santa Claus. Secretary Rice's friend, 11-year-old Denise McNair, died in the blast along with 14-year-olds Carol Robinson, Addie Mae Collins, and Cynthia Wellesley. Their deaths at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan members garnered national support for passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Condi Rice became the first female African-American Secretary of State, following the first African male, Colin Powell. At the funeral for the three girls, one of the family members requested a private burial. But for the three girls, Dr. King spoke about life being as hard as crucible steel. If you've ever been near a steel mill or seen the huge crucible as it pours out the steel, you know what he's talking about. He's also talking about being under fire. We are known by the friends we keep, and hopefully we grew up with friends and family who encouraged us to be the best we could be. What if Denise, Carol, Addie Mae, and Cynthia were alive today? How much could they have contributed to our society? Perhaps a better question to ask ourselves is, was the sacrifice of 4 innocents enough to wake us up, break our hearts, and keep us alert to evil? Written by Richard Farina and made famous by Joan Baez, perhaps the song Birmingham Sunday did finally shame us into doing something. And the choirs keep singing of freedom. The 24th Amendment was not passed by Congress until August 27, 1962, nor ratified until January 23, 1964. The right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or any other election for president or vice president, for electors for president or vice president, or for senator or representative in Congress should not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. Again, the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. It was soon followed by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It was a landmark piece. And it prevented the United States outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It ended unequal application of voter registration requirements and racial segregation in schools, at the workplace, and by facilities that serve the general public. Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated April 4th, 1965, 10 months after the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was signed into law. I went through Travis Air Force Base in 1972, and the ringing in my ears was the incident that happened in 1971, one of several throughout our armed forces. You may have read about the Kitty Hawk incident. But during the days of May 1971, a riot erupted in the dormitory complex on base. The original altercation was over a minor noise complaint, but soon enveloped the whole dorm complex and pitted black against white. Black service members had a long list of grievances, including unequal pay and leave authorizations. Unequal pay and leave authorizations. 100 were detained by the dozens of local police officers that were called in for help. The incident was countered by the base commander's commission of a human relations council. In fact, the incident that had brought the issue of race to the forefront throughout the whole Air Force, cultural sensitivity courses were held throughout the whole branch, which aided in the cooperation of the various cultures and in mitigation of racism. When I came back from Southeast Asia in 1975 to Pope Air Force Base, the first order I got was to attend one of these human relations councils. And I did so. As a result, I started what I didn't realize at the time was a career in personnel. We call it human resources today. It was a pivotal point in my career. All commissioned officers take an oath. I'm going to read it. I, and you state your name, having been appointed to the rank of in the United States, and you state your branch of service, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to same, that I take this oath freely, this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will faithfully discharge the office upon which I am about to enter, so help me God. The foreign enemies are fairly easy to spot, even when they're wearing civilian clothes and planting IEDs. But the domestic enemies hide in plain sight while holding deep hatreds for what we represent. A strong faith and commitment to the idea that all men are created equal will help shed a very bright light on the enemy, as Dr. King once did. It is easier to preach 10 sermons than it is to live one. Dr. King did both. A light in the darkness. And I look forward to General Gorham's message. And remember, peace starts with a smile. Thank you.
I would like to welcome you all, and I appreciate you for your attendance here today. I am Dominique Jefferson, and I'm a college transfer student here, and I will be introducing our speaker today. Mr. James Gorham, a native of Falkland, North Carolina, lives in North Carolina with his wife and 3 children. He earned a bachelor's degree in history from East Carolina University, go Pirates, and holds a master's degree in strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College. Mr. Gorham retired in September 2012 as a brigadier general and the assistant adjutant general for domestic operations, with the North Carolina National Guard capping a tremendous 38-year military career that included 3 years of active duty service in the U.S. Army. Additionally, Mr. Gorham spent 29 years in the banking industry, retiring in 2010 as a manager of the retail bank of First Citizens Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. James J.R. Gorham.
Thank you very much. Son, what's your name? You know you just messed me up right then, right, with that song. Generals ain't supposed to be crying, okay? Got me up here about the ball. You got a very talented gift. Use it. I'm going to try to get through this without getting too emotional, because this is a very serious issue, civil rights and works of Dr. King. But there is a book that I read, and in that book, it states that a man's gift will make room for him and bring him before great people. And as we come today to commemorate and celebrate the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I thank God that He has allowed me the opportunity to come before you today, such great people as you are. We're here to celebrate what Martin Luther King Jr. did. But I think that we should also be here today to celebrate what you, the students and the faculty here at Forsyth Technical Community College, is doing today. So I would ask right now, let's give everybody here a round of applause. Now, when I accepted the invitation to speak at this celebration, I asked Mr. Liggins, how long should I be prepared to speak? And he responded, about 15 or 20 minutes. And to this I responded, how can I share all the wisdom and knowledge that I have gathered over all these years in such a small matter of time? And he looked at me and he said, Mr. Gorham, or General Gorham, I strongly suggest that you speak very slowly. But with all seriousness, I would like to thank Forsyth for allowing me to be here today. And I would also like to acknowledge my lovely and beautiful wife, who has come out here today to support her boo. You stand, babe? Get the folks here. You know, the Bible says a good thing when a man finds a wife. That's my good thing. Now, we all know that Dr. Martin Luther King was a great humanitarian. He was a great orator. He was a great civil rights leader who championed equality, peace, and diversity. And he worked tirelessly to create a better society for all mankind. But according to Dr. Martin Luther King himself, he said, and I will quote from a speech that he gave, he said, and I quote, "First and foremost, I am a preacher. Before I was a civil rights leader, I was a preacher of the gospel. This was my first calling, and it remains my greatest commitment. You know, all that I do in civil rights, I do it because I consider it a part of my ministry. I have no other ambition in life but to achieve excellence in the Christian ministry. I don't plan to run for any political office. I don't plan to do anything but remain a preacher. And what I do in this struggle, along with many others, grows out of my feelings that the preacher must be concerned about the whole man." End of quote. This, in my humble opinion, embodies the essence of who Dr. King was. Now, when I think of Dr. King and the many speeches he gave, there are two that stand out to me. The first one is the "I Have a Dream" speech. And the second one is "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech, which incidentally was the last speech he gave prior to his assassination on April the 4th, 1968. The "I Have a Dream" speech is significant because it gives a glimpse of Dr. King's vision for the future. But more importantly, it is a challenge for us today to continue to dream, because sometimes the hustle and bustle of life and the cares of this world come in and steal, kill, and destroy our dreams. But I have come here today to bring you a message of hope. And I define hope as joyful, confident expectations. I have come here today to bring you a message of inspiration, to encourage you not only to dream, but to pursue those dreams with everything within you. I have come here today because, as Dr. King said, I've been to the mountaintop, and mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. So if you would allow me, for the next few minutes, I would like to share with you my mountaintop experience. And I hope that this experience will illustrate to you the glory of the Lord. Now, several years ago, when I was a major in the military, I attended a church conference in the early part of that year. And one of the speakers there shared these 10 words with me. And if you've got a pen, you might just want to jot them down. He shared these 10 words, and they transformed my life. He said, God will provide provisions for those who pursue their visions. And those words resonated in my spirit so strongly that I decided to write them down. Not on a piece of paper, not on a notepad, not on my iPad, but I wrote them down on the table of my heart. Because when you write things down on papers and pads, you might need that information, but it might not be there when you need it. But when you write them down on the table of your heart, wherever you go, so goes it. Oftentimes, when we hear things, We receive it. And sometimes we even believe it. But seldom do we understand it. And it's not until we experience it for ourselves that we get the full understanding. As I said earlier, I heard these words in the early part of the year. Well, several years later, during the month of June, I, along with my military unit, had to go to Fort Carson, Colorado for 2 weeks of training. When I arrived there at Fort Carson and I was exiting their aircraft, the first thing that I saw was Pikes Peak, the tallest mountain in the United States, 13 miles to the top. And as I looked at that mountain, I received an unction in my spirit to climb to the top of that mountain. And so I made a decision. I decided that I was going to climb to the top of the mountain. During that first week, I went around my unit, speaking to all my soldiers, asking them to come climb with me. I first went to my captains, detachment commanders. These are the officers. I asked them, come, go climb with me. And they said to me, sir, let me get this straight. You want me to go with you to climb a mountain that's 13 miles high on my day off? And I said, yes. And they said, no, thank you, sir. So then I went to my detachment sergeants, the NCOs, the backbone of the Army. And I asked them the same thing. And they gave me the same reply. Thanks, but no thanks. But I continued in my quest. I went to everyone and anyone that would listen to me, asking them to come, go with me to climb this mountain. At the end of the week, I had 4 individual soldiers, the smallest rank in my unit. They said, sir, we will go with you. So I said, great. So we'll fast forward. It's Saturday morning, 0700. We're at the base of the mountain. I'm very prepared for the climb. I have on a t-shirt. I have a pair of OD green army pants cut off at the knee. My jungle boots with the steel plate on the inside. I looked up there and saw that white covering on that mountain. I had my little army wool sweater around my waist and a canteen of water. I was ready to go. All I had on my mind was climbing to the top of that mountain. Nothing else mattered. There was other people there with us. People there with backpacks on their backs. And they had picnic baskets and lunch boxes. And we was there all excited. We were high-fiving, taking pictures. Just enjoying the scenery. So then we started to ascend the climb. And we climbed and we climbed and we climbed. And about 7 miles up, we encountered a log cabin on one side of the trail and a picnic area on the other side. So we went in and we purchased some food and water and we got our eat on. And I sat there as I was eating, I was noticing that as people finished their meal, they turned around and went back down the mountain. But the ones that were brave of heart, we kept climbing. And we climbed and we climbed and we climbed. And several hours later, we were at mile marker 11. We have broken the tree line. There's nothing but rock now. We're 2 miles from our destination. And all of a sudden, clouds came in and hovered on that mountain. And it started to thunder, and it started to lightning. Now, folks, let me tell you, it's a whole different deal when you're down here on the ground and there's thunder and lightning, compared to when you're up there in the cloud and there's lightning right beside you and the thunder is roaring like an artillery barrage in your ears. And I had to make a command decision. I decided that we would take some security measures and get in amongst the rocks to keep from being struck by lightning. Now, a very strange thing started to occur. We stopped moving. And that film of perspiration that had accrued on our skin as we were making our ascent up that mountain started to cool off at a very rapid pace. We got so cold, I cannot explain to you the feeling being there with a wool sweater. We started, it was 76 degrees, now it's 29. And as I'm putting on my sweater, I look, and there's these 4 sets of eyes. They looking at me. They're not saying anything with their mouth, but those eyes are saying, "Sir, what are we going to do? You got us up here in these conditions. What are we going to do?" Now let me ask you a rhetorical question, especially the leaders, people here in leadership. Have you ever been at a place in your life when you don't know what to do and you don't know where to go? That's where I was. But this is where God loves to meet us. Not knowing where to go and not knowing what to do. The only thing that you can do is ask and request and reach out to a higher power. And that's what I did. I didn't go to a long, drawn-out dissertation. Lord, I stretch my hand to thee. No other help do I know. If you would withdraw yourself from me, Lord, whither would I go? Didn't do none of that. Matter of fact, I didn't even open my mouth. I thought in my mind, Lord, I need your help. And as soon as I thought that in my mind, here comes these 3 guys along the trail. Local guys who live there, knowing what they might encounter, well prepared, backpacks on their back. First guy came up to me and he said these words, "Are you going to the top?" And I said, "Yes." And when I said yes, he dropped his pack. And the guy behind him, he dropped his pack. And the guy behind him dropped his pack. And out of those backpacks came toboggans, gloves, and sweaters. The provisions had arrived. And then he looked at me and said what all infantry officers love to hear, our motto, "Follow me. I know the way to the top." And so we got behind those 3 guys. And for the next 2 miles, on our hands and knees, we crawled up the side of that mountain. The next day, I'm sitting in my, laying in my bed, reflecting over the last week's event. And I'm thinking about everything that has happened. And I engage in a dialogue with the big guy. We start talking in my mind. And he says to me, "JR, did you get the lessons from last week?" And I said, "What lessons?" He said, "Lesson number 1. When I give you a vision or a dream for your life or for your business or for your career or for your profession, I'm just going to give you enough to see if you will say yes with your heart. Not your head, but your heart. Because see, when your heart get fixed, your mind get made up. And then you can go every step of the way. He said, when I told you to climb to the top of the mountain and you said yes, I moved on the minds of that guy you encountered who brought you the provision. I moved on his mind and challenged him to go to the top of the mountain that day so he could have your provisions for you when you got there. What I'm trying to say is, when you say yes to the vision or the dream that you have for your life, things are happening that you do not know of that will cause the provisions to be there when you need them. Second thing, people that you think will be with you when you're pursuing your vision, the people with influence, they won't be there. God takes ordinary people like me and you and give them extraordinary ability to help you achieve your goals or dreams. Number 3, catch this one, folks. Excitement leaves when adversity comes. See, when we started our climb up that mountain, we was at the base. We were excited, high-fiving, taking the pictures, all of that good stuff. But when we got up there at mile 11 and the storm came in and it started snowing, fear, disappointment came in. And I'm here to tell you, it's fine while you're pursuing your vision. It's fine to have a little fear. It's fine to have disappointments. But do not let them take residence in your spirit. Because if you do, you will not achieve your goal. Lesson number 4. While you are in pursuit of your vision, treat everyone, I mean everyone that you encounter, treat them nice. Because you never know who God is going to use to bring you your provision. Those 3 guys, we have seen them several times during the course of the day. We have been leapfrogging up that mountain. They'll climb for a while and rest. We're passing. And every time we would pass, I did what I knew to do. I would give them a friendly smile and say, "Hey, y'all, how you doing?" Now, I could have did something else. And when they saw us up there on that mountain, they would have walked right on by us. But because we showed ourselves friendly, they came to our rescue. Now, the final lesson. Even when the provisions arrive, you got to work your butt off to get to the top. You see, after the sweaters and the toboggans and the gloves and all that stuff came, we still had to climb 2 miles, the toughest part of the climb, on our hands and knees to get to the top. So, I'm going to kind of sum this up by saying, here, right here in Forsyth Tech, this institution of higher learning, the instructors here provide you lessons to see if you learn the test. But in life provides you a test to see if you learn the lessons. During the civil rights movement, Dr. Martin Luther King was tested time and time again. And I believe he learned the same lessons that I spoke of. And if we as a people want to honor the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, I challenge you to start dreaming again. But not only to dream, but to pursue your dreams with everything that's within you. Give God something to work with. Pursue it with your spirit, your mind, and your body. Write your vision plainly upon tables, so he that runs with it, who that readeth it, can run with it. Now, as I take my seat, I would like to leave you with one last thought. Dr. King was a dreamer, and he wanted us to be dreamers. But I'm here to tell you, if your memories are larger than your dreams, your life is in trouble. So dream again so that you can live again. Thank you very much.
So Monday was the day that the nation celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King. Today, here at Forsyth Tech, we get to celebrate. Those wonderful words spoken by Mr. Gorham were nothing short of the truth. We all have a duty to uphold and carry out the vision set for us by Dr. King. Here at Forsyth Tech, we embrace our differences. We come together, and we know we don't have to do anything huge on our own. We know that if we each do something small together, we can be extraordinary. Together, we can make a difference. Every student here leaves an impact. Every student leaves a mark, whether they know it or not. As we leave here today, I encourage you all to think about the mark you're leaving. Think about the impact that you're making. Together, we can make sure that Dr. King's legacy lives on through our generation. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to come and celebrate with us. And a very special thanks to Mr. Gorham, whose words no doubt touched everyone in this room. So thank you all, and you can help yourself to refreshments out in the lobby.